Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Welcome, readers and book lovers, to the last day of the Festival of Storytellers. I want to thank, with gratitude on behalf of all the authors represented here, I want to thank Reader's Magnet for giving all of us authors a chance to showcase ourselves and our books. I am Stephen Sears. My book is In the Beginning, A Consideration of Genesis. And today I want to talk about the three outsiders that we see in Genesis and how their ability to forgive their family members heals those families going forward. The three I'm talking about are Ishmael, Esau, and Joseph. All three receive terrible mistreatment by their family members. In some cases, they are, in Joseph's case, he's been exiled, and he literally, the family thinks he's lost and gone. That's how far out of the story he is. Ishmael is exiled out of Canaan, and Esau pretty much is completely alienated from his brother. So the first person is Ishmael. Who is Ishmael? So Abraham leaves Mesopotamia with his wife Sarah, who from the beginning we're told is barren. They are now in Canaan for 11 years, and she's still not given birth. So she has an idea. She says, take my maidservant Hagar and have a son by her so that I can fulfill my duty to create a son for you. So Abraham goes along with this, and that son is Ishmael. Now, 13 years later, when Abraham is 99, and Sarah's 89, angels come and tell, thanks for the comment. So the angels come and tell Sarah and Abraham, guess what? You're going to be the parents of a son next year. They don't believe it, but it happens. So when they're 100, when he's 100 and Sarah's not 90, they have Isaac. Isaac is now just been born. Ishmael is now 14. A year or two later, when Isaac's weaned, Sarah's worried about this competition. And Genesis hints that both Hagar and Ishmael are mistreating her and Isaac. So Sarah goes to Abraham and says, get rid of these people. They are not inheriting. Isaac's inheriting. So Abraham is reluctant to do this. He still loves Ishmael. So God comes to him and says, it's okay, you can do this. Because he says, he tells him, he says, God will surely bless him. I will make him Ishmael fruitful and will greatly increase his numbers. He will be a father of 12 rulers and I will make him a great nation. But Ishmael doesn't seem to be all that great a guy. Earlier, we find him described as he will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. So when Abraham is a little over 100, he kicks them out. So imagine my surprise as I'm reading along. Mistreatment among family members. Yes, very true. So imagine my surprise when I'm reading along. I get to the death of Abraham, and it says, when Abraham died, Isaac and Ishmael came and buried him. I'm like, whoa, where did Ishmael come from? How could we possibly be reading about Ishmael? He was sent packing all those years ago. The only way this is possible is that Abraham never forgot his almost son Ishmael. It's pretty clear that Abraham looked out for him, probably sent him things. He probably sent some of his advisors to see how he was doing. He never lost the connection, even though he sent him away. We don't hear much else about Ishmael in the Bible, but guess what? In the Quran, we hear a good bit more. And here's what the Quran says about Ishmael. The Quran quotes Abraham as saying, "Our Lord, I have settled some of my offspring, Ishmael, in an uncultivated valley close to your sacred house, so that they may keep up the prayer." It further states, "As Abraham and Ishmael built up the foundations of the house, our Lord makes us devoted to you, make our descendants into a community devoted to you." And further along, the Quran is equally clear that Ishmael kept his faith and passed it on. This is another quote from the Quran. "Mentioned too in the scripture the story of Ishmael. He was true to his promise, a messenger and a prophet. He commanded his household to pray and give alms, and his Lord was well pleased with him." This indicates that it sounds like Abraham didn't just keep an eye on him. It sounds like Abraham actually went and saw him occasionally and had physical contact with him. So we see that despite being ostracized at the end of their lives, Ishmael came and was well enough in relationship that he was there to help Isaac bury him. Let's see. So now we come to Esau. So who is Esau? So Isaac was born when Abraham was 100. When Isaac is 40, he marries Rebecca, but they don't have children until Isaac is 60. Great to see the comments. So when he's 60, he and Rebecca have twins. They have first to come out as Esau, and then the other twin is Jacob. So what do they say about Esau? The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So the first things we find out about Esau is that Jacob, through subterfuge, offers him soup, and Esau so easily sells his birthright to Jacob. And then right after that happens, we find out that Isaac is in very poor shape. He's blind, he's laying in bed, and he's ready to offer his final blessing to Esau, but instead Rebecca engineers to have Jacob steal it. Esau is flabbergasted, and instead of getting a really nice blessing that Isaac mistakenly gave to Jacob, after Esau begs for something similar, this is what Isaac gives to Esau. He says, "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's riches, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword and will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw off his yoke from your neck." So next we find out Rebecca comes up to Jacob shortly after that and says, "Oh, by the way, your brother Esau is consoling himself with thoughts of killing you." Whoa, this is pretty bad. So she engineers to send Jacob away to her brother's place way out in Mesopotamia to spend time with Laban, basically to get him out of the way with the hope that Esau will just get over it. But she papers this over by saying, oh, I don't want you marrying one of those Canaanite women. Go back to Mesopotamia and find a wife there. What's interesting is the way they papered over is heard by Esau, and Esau is aware that because he married two Canaanite women, his parents are not pleased with it, and he goes to make up for it. He goes to find another bride, and where does he go? He goes, yes, and I'm fond of them. Yes, he goes to Ishmael and marries Ishmael's daughter. So guess, interesting. The Bible tells us that Isaac favored Esau and Rebekah favored Jacob. So how it's interesting that because of that, when we need to get a bride for Jacob, she sends Jacob to her family, which is Laban, who's the son of Nahor, and good question. I'll try to get to that before I go. When it's time for Esau to look for a better bride, he goes to his father's half brother Ishmael. Very interesting. So 20 years goes by. Jacob has been out of Canaan. He's been way up in Mesopotamia. He's now decided it's time to go home, as God had predicted. God said you would come back to Canaan. So he comes back. First, he has a confrontation with Laban because Laban doesn't want him to go. Then he's worried. So he sends some counselors and a whole bunch of things to Esau to say I'm coming back. And he treats Esau. He's very respectful. Treats Esau as over him. So when they come back, this is actually somewhat funny. That's not it. When Esau responds, he says, I can't wait to see you. I'm coming with 400 men. Oh my God. Jacob's scared to death. They're going to annihilate me, because Esau's in a position to do that. He's much more powerful than Jacob. Just has his extended family, whereas Esau's got practically this army. So imagine Jacob's surprise. Well, first, Jacob's worried about all this. He wrestles with God. Now he's got to deal with Esau. But when Esau comes, Esau's like, he runs, he kisses him. He says, oh my God, it's so good to see you. What are all these people? He says, well, these are all the children I have from my wives. And he says, why did you send me all these things? He says, you don't need to do that. I've got plenty. Jacob says, no, I want you to keep them. The rest of this thing is sad in that Esau is loving the fact that he is reunited with his brother. All Jacob wants to do is, I'm solving a problem here. He has nothing to do with what the relationship is. So Esau wants him, come back with me to Edom. We can go together. No. Jacob refuses to do it. He puts him off. I'll see you later, but he never does it. So this is what's beautiful about Esau, is that despite the mistreatment, he's willing to let it go and heal the relationship. And in fact, when Isaac dies, both Esau and Jacob go and bury him, and then they make a deal about how they're going to move forward. The other thing that's interesting about Esau, we get a whole chapter about Esau and his relations with the people in Edom and the king of Edom, Seir. It's another genealogy, but guess what? The genealogy shows that Esau takes as one of his wives Oholibamah, who in fact is the granddaughter of Seir, and Esau's son Eliphaz takes as a concubine Timnah, who's a daughter of one of Seir's other sons. So what does that tell us? That tells us that Esau got along with his neighbors in Edom. They intermarried. So basically he lived in peace with his neighbors, something Jacob had a lot of trouble doing. We now come to the last outsider, Joseph. Joseph, we meet Joseph. Joseph is the second youngest son of Jacob. When we meet him, he's 17 years old. His father has him spying on his sons, and he rats them out. He gets them in trouble. And then he has these dreams where everybody's bowing down to him. So his brothers hate him. So the next time he comes by, they say, let's just get rid of this guy. Let's kill him and see how the dreamer feels. Reuben is able to talk him out of it. They throw him in a cistern. And eventually Judah says, well, killing's kind of extreme. And then a caravan comes and they sell him to the caravan, and he's sold into slavery in Egypt. That's when we get the story of Judah and Tamar. Next we hear Joseph is in prison because the official that he works for, well, the official's wife has the hots for him. Even though Joseph rebukes her advances, she accuses him of trying to rape her. He's thrown in prison, and by interpreting dreams, he comes to the attention of Pharaoh, who has these dreams. He's able to interpret them, and he gives him a plan for how to deal with them. The dream, Joseph interprets the dreams as this means that Egypt will have 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. So somebody needs to take measures to be prepared and save all this stuff. Good question. I'll answer that in a minute. So now Joseph's the most important person in Egypt. There's 7 years of plenty. Now there's a year of famine. So the famine is also happening in Canaan. Jacob sends his sons and says, go to Egypt and get some food. They go there, and who do they see but Joseph? But they don't recognize him. He looks like any other Egyptian, but Joseph recognizes them. And he gives them a hard time, and he lets them take some food back, but he accuses them of being spies. And he holds Simeon as a hostage. But he says, when Jacob sends the brothers, he refuses to send Benjamin, the youngest, which is the brother Joseph has by Rachel. Joseph seems to be interested in finding out, is Benjamin really okay, or did he get done in by his brothers just like I did? So he says, don't come back unless you bring Benjamin. Yeah, this is a good story. So they go back. Jacob doesn't want to let him go. Judah finally talks him into it. So now it's the second year, more famine. They don't have a choice. So they reluctantly send Benjamin. They go back. Joseph still not sure how this is going to work out. So he treats them well. He gives them all their food, but he takes this really fancy cup and puts it in Benjamin's saddlebag. Then he sends his army out, has them look for things, and finds the cup and accuses them of stealing. He has them all brought back. The brothers don't know what's going on. They can't figure this out. We had nothing to do with this. And then they find out it's in Benjamin's saddlebag. So Joseph says, I want to, all of you, I'd like to blame all of you, but that's not fair. So I'm just blaming Benjamin. So I'm keeping him. The rest of you can go. He's testing them to see, will they stand up for Benjamin? And they do. Judah makes this long speech, where Judah basically says, if we don't come back with Benjamin, it'll kill our father. We can't go back unless we bring him. Joseph finally breaks down and tells them, oh, guess what? I'm your long lost brother. They're petrified. They are petrified. They can't believe it. He eventually convinces them. He says, bring your family back, bring Jacob back, bring them all, and you can live here. And so when they come back, Joseph's now 39. Jacob is 130. They live until Jacob is 147 when he dies. So this is the part I want to talk about. Yeah, and I'll leave us some time. So when they first come and he reveals himself, they're scared to death. And they think, well, he's got it in for us. We wanted to kill him. And this is what Joseph says to his brothers. Come close to me. I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. And he goes on and on. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, to save your lives by a great deliverance. So here it is. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He'd made me father to Pharaoh. So he tells him to come back. So going forward, so now we get to the end of Genesis. They've embalmed Jacob. They've gone back to bury him in Canaan. He's now come back. So here's what it says. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, what if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him? So they sent word to Joseph saying, your father left these instructions before he died. The brothers before Jacob died, get him to write a letter that they're going to spring on Joseph. Here's the letter that they got Jacob to write. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. So now this is the brothers. They're saying, now please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father. When the message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves before him. We are your slaves. But Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And be reassured then, and spoke kindly to them. So that's what we get from the three outsiders. There's hardly any information about Ishmael or Esau, but as we see, they're able to forgive their family members and establish a right relationship. And such it is that Joseph also does. So there we see, once again, from all these stories, we see the greatness of God through fallible human beings who God is able to use in ways that we humans cannot predict or see to accomplish his purpose, God's purpose. So let's see. Had some questions along the way. Still got a little bit of time. While these stories capture how difficult and cruel people have been, they also show the imperfections of humanity. I think this is the highlighted theme. Yes, that's exactly what. That's what's so engaging about the book, because these people could be today. There's nothing saintly about any of them. Even Abraham. I mean, I hold Abraham as misguided about the whole sacrifice of Isaac. The Bible says God told him to do it, but I don't believe it for a minute. And Abraham twice poses his wife as a sister, so he's trying to avoid difficulty, but it just gets him into more difficulty. So let's see. How are the stories different from the Bible and the Quran? What is significance? Well, what I saw in the Quran is that Muhammad many times refers to all the patriarchs as people before me that were good before God. And so Muhammad is saying, these are my predecessors and I'm following in their footsteps. He doesn't say they're lesser or more. He just says we're all kind of in the same boat. And including that is Jesus. He'll say Jesus also was a great prophet before the Lord. But Muhammad is just saying, and I'm following them, and I'm equally in greatness in terms of my relationship with God. But Muhammad's talking about his own time. I'm curious about two churches. No, actually, one's not a Catholic church, one's not a mosque. They're both. One is a Presbyterian church. I was raised a Presbyterian, but the other is a congregational church, and so I attend both. One is in Hyde Park, and one is the neighborhood next door. Let's see, any other questions? So Benward, do you think it's reasonable how easily forgiven he was? Do you think so? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It takes a lot of energy to hold grudges. It's so much easier to let them go. But it's hard to forgive people if they're not willing to confess that they did ill to you. I find it, at least for myself. But absolutely, it's important to let it go, to move on. Yes, forgiveness really is a massive part of Genesis. Genesis, with how chaotic the stories can be, forgiveness and perhaps a redemption have always been a commonality. Yes, because faith and belief and following God, they go so far, but forgiveness takes you further along. It's easier to follow in faith if you let go of these things. These family dynamics are crazy. Why do you think there have been such an imbalance between families back then? Well, it's a good question. I think it's like every time. There's some families that have drama, and there's other families. For instance, you don't see much about Isaac. I don't think there was much drama with Isaac's family. Certainly with Jacob and Esau, but he and his neighbors seem to get along just fine. But as you can see, the parents seem to have favorites, and that caused trouble with the family dynamics. And in the book, I call to task the parents for not stepping in and saying, Jacob, you can't take your brother's inheritance just over a bottle of soup. Forget it. This is not standing. For whatever reason, the parents let it stand. So I kind of badmouth the parents for that. Let's see. So anyway, well, I want to thank Reader's Magnet for giving me a chance to talk about Genesis. I could do 8 more of these. There's plenty more material in Genesis. What's his motivation for stealing? What's his motivation? Well, I think you're referring to Joseph and all the shenanigans. I think Joseph was testing his brothers to see if they would stand up for Benjamin. First, he wanted to make sure Benjamin was still alive, and secondly, he wanted to see would his brothers really stand up for him if push came to shove. And once they do, he's like, okay, things are better here. Things are better. So I want to thank all of you for tuning in and sharing Genesis with me. It's been a great pleasure to have these video sessions. I hope you've enjoyed them. With that, I think I will say goodbye. Take care, everybody. Thanks for coming.